Harriet Edgewater stepped off the train in Cheyenne with a question burning inside her. What if the choice meant to save her family turned out to be the one that broke her heart instead? The moment her boots touched the dusty platform, that question wrapped around her like the sharp western wind. She had traveled across half the country to meet a man she had never seen. A man folks called the Fat Rancher. A man with a fortune as wide as the plains, and a reputation loud enough to reach even the streets of Philadelphia. Harriet clutched her small carpet bag as the wind tugged at her dark hair. Cheyenne was loud and busy. Cowboys strode past with heavy steps. Wagons rattled over the street. Horses stomped and tossed their heads. Nothing felt familiar. Yet her whole life rested on what she would find here. Back home, her father lay sick in bed. Bills piled higher each day. Her mother tried to stretch every coin. Her younger sister Lucy forced a smile, even when worry filled her eyes. Harriet had watched it all fall apart. She knew she had to do something before their whole world collapsed. So when she saw Caldwell Beaumont's ad for a mail-order bride, she answered it. Not for love, for survival. She had heard stories about Caldwell, that he was big in size, big in wealth, and big in power. Harriet hoped kindness lived under all that weight. If he treated her well, maybe she could live without love. Maybe she could save her family. But now, standing alone in a town she had never seen, doubt crawled through her chest. She waited. Minutes turned into an hour. No large stranger came looking for her. Instead, a short, older man with the thick mustache and kind brown eyes approached. "Miss Edgewater?" he asked, tipping his hat. Harriet let out a small breath of relief. "Yes, I am. Name is Bartholomew O'Connell. I work for Caldwell Beaumont. He sent me as he had business in town. He is mighty sorry to miss you." O'Connell helped her into a stagecoach marked Circle B Ranch. The ride was rough. The wheels hit every rock and hole. O'Connell filled the silence by talking about ranch work and Caldwell's way of dealing with trouble. Harriet listened closely. She pictured a man strong enough to earn respect, yet fair enough to calm a fight. When the ranch came into view, Harriet's breath caught. Fields spread far as she could see. Cattle dotted the land. A tall white house sat on a hill, shining under the afternoon sun. Barns stood on each side. This was no small homestead. This was an empire. Harriet stepped out with shaky legs. Before she could speak, the front door opened. Caldwell Beaumont walked out, and she felt her heart jolt. He was large, broad-shouldered, round in the belly, and heavy in the steps. But his eyes were soft, blue, and gentle. They did not match the loud stories she had heard. "Miss Edgewater," he said with a warm, steady voice. "Welcome to Circle B Ranch." Harriet forced a small smile. "Thank you, Mr. Beaumont. Call me Caldwell," he said with a small laugh. He showed her around the ranch. The cattle, the horses, the workers who nodded respectfully when he passed. Harriet watched him closely. The ranch hand straightened when he neared. The animals settled under his touch. He carried the quiet confidence of a man who knew every inch of his land. But Harriet also felt the silence between them. He waited for her thoughts, yet did not push. Inside the house, he gave her a guest room. Sunlight poured through the window. The bed was soft. For the first time since leaving home, she felt a bit of safety. But safety was not love. Safety was not certainty. As she unpacked her belongings, her hands trembled. Was this truly the life she was meant to choose? The next morning, Caldwell asked her to join him on the porch. The sunrise painted the hills gold. He rocked gently in his chair, holding a cup of coffee. "I like things plain and honest, Harriet," he said, not looking at her. "So I will be plain now. I want a wife because a man gets lonely. I have land and cattle and a house, but no one to share it with. I would like to marry in a month if you choose it. Only if you choose it." Her heart pounded hard. He was offering her stability, a future, a way to save her family. But she barely knew him. She felt no spark, only pressure. She swallowed. "Caldwell, I need more time." Sadness flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. "Take all the time you need." Days passed. Harriet tried to learn the ranch. She drank tea with Caldwell. She walked the fields. He treated her with respect and patience. Yet each night she lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her heart pulled in two. When he gently asked again for her answer, the truth slipped out before she could soften it. "I am sorry. I cannot marry you." Pain crossed his face, though he tried to hide it. "I would never force a woman into something she does not want." He walked away, leaving her standing alone with guilt burning inside her. That night, Harriet wrote a long letter to her sister Lucy. She wrote about her fear, her doubts, and why she said no. She begged for advice. She did not know Lucy's reply would change everything. 2 weeks later, when Lucy stepped off the train with bright, brave eyes, Harriet felt the ground shift beneath her, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. Harriet rushed into Lucy's arms the moment she stepped off the train. Lucy smelled of home, warm and familiar, and Harriet held her close as if she could hide inside that comfort. Lucy touched her cheek gently and smiled in a way that made Harriet's heart twist. "You sounded so lost in your letter," Lucy whispered. "I had to come. And maybe this life was meant for me instead." Harriet stared at her sister. Lucy was younger, softer, and braver in ways Harriet had never been. Lucy did not fear new places. She welcomed them. Harriet suddenly felt small and unsure next to her. The wagon ride to the ranch bumped across uneven ground. Lucy leaned out to watch the plains roll by like the sea. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Harriet wished she could feel that same wonder instead of dread. When Circle B Ranch came into view, Lucy gasped. "All of this belongs to Caldwell?" she asked. Harriet nodded. "He built it with his own hands." Caldwell stood on the porch when they arrived. His large shape cast a long shadow in the noon sun. His eyes flicked from Harriet to Lucy and back again. Confusion filled his face. Lucy curtsied politely. "I am Lucy Edgewater, sir. Thank you for letting me visit." Caldwell said nothing for a long moment. Later, Harriet pulled him aside and told him everything. She expected anger or embarrassment or disappointment. Instead, he only listened. So he finally said slowly, "You turned me down and sent your sister instead." Harriet's throat tightened. She suggested coming. She thought maybe you and she could get to know each other, if you wish. Caldwell looked over at Lucy, who was laughing with O'Connell. Something in his expression softened. "I cannot make promises," he murmured. "But she may stay. And we will see." The words cut Harriet deeper than she expected. She had chosen this. She had walked away. Yet seeing him look at Lucy with gentle interest made her stomach ache. Over the next week, Harriet watched everything change. Lucy's laughter carried through the house. She spent time with the ranch hands learning names and jobs. She rode horses with Caldwell along the river and asked questions about the land and cattle. She ate the heavy beef stew Harriet had never liked and praised every bite. Caldwell seemed lighter around Lucy. His shoulders eased, his voice softened. He spoke more and even laughed sometimes. Harriet noticed how his eyes followed Lucy when she moved, how his face warmed when she smiled. Lucy did not fear this world. She fit into it as if she were born to stand under these wide skies. Harriet felt like an outsider in her own life. One afternoon, Harriet searched the ranch house library for a ledger. While looking through a drawer, she found a ring of keys. One of the keys fit a locked compartment in the old desk. Curiosity tugged at her. She opened it. Inside were several letters sealed long ago. The first one bore a name she knew. Ophelia Farnsworth. Harriet broke the seal with shaking fingers. The letter spoke of danger, of blackmail, of men trying to force Caldwell to give up mineral rights. It warned that they would hurt him if he resisted. Harriet's heart pounded. This was no small ranch feud. Someone out there wanted Caldwell broken. She returned the letters and locked the drawer. The fear stayed inside her chest. If Lucy married Caldwell, she would be stepping into danger she did not even know existed. That night, Harriet barely slept. The next days brought more change. Lucy and Caldwell grew closer. They took rides near the cottonwoods. They talked long after dinner. Harriet heard their soft voices through the thin walls. Something real was growing between them. Then one morning, Lucy's cheeks glowed with excitement. "He asked if I would consider staying," she whispered. "Maybe for good." Harriet forced a smile, though her chest felt tight. "That is wonderful." But doubt burned through her. That evening on the back porch, Caldwell asked Harriet if she was all right. They watched the sun melt across the hills. "It is strange," she admitted, "watching you and Lucy grow close." He nodded. "I do not want to hurt you. You are not," she said softly. "I hurt you first." He stared at the horizon. "Your sister has a warmth, something I did not know I needed." Before Harriet could answer, a ranch hand ran toward them. Riders at the south fence. "Looks like Glay's men." Harriet's stomach dropped. Caldwell's face hardened. He mounted his horse with his men and rode out. Harriet followed on foot and kept her distance as they reached the fence line. Zebediah Glay and his riders were tearing down posts. Glay sneered when Caldwell confronted him. "You cannot keep this land forever. It will be mine soon." Rifles flashed in the fading sun. Harriet remembered the letters, the threats. Her pulse hammered. After a tense standoff, Glay rode off with a promise. "Next time you will not be so lucky." Harriet trembled. Lucy had no idea what sort of enemy Caldwell had. That night, Harriet wrote a letter to Addison Pratt, a family friend and former lawman. Days later, his reply came. Glay was dangerous, and only someone with true authority like Wyatt Earp in Cheyenne could help. Harriet tucked the letter away, her heart racing. Meanwhile, Lucy and Caldwell grew closer still. Soon Caldwell proposed in a simple, heartfelt way. Lucy accepted with tears of joy. Harriet smiled through the pain twisting inside her. But danger had not faded. At dawn one morning, fire tore through the southern fence. Flames reached high into the sky. Everyone rushed out to fight the blaze. The fire destroyed part of the fence but raised fear across the ranch. Wedding plans continued, but unease hung in the air. Harriet watched Lucy pick wildflowers and admired her courage, though fear ate at her own heart. Finally, the day came. Lucy stood in a simple white dress, glowing. "You look beautiful," Harriet whispered. Lucy squeezed her hand. "This is right. I feel it." The small ceremony began on the back porch. The preacher was late, but they exchanged vows anyway. Then the ranch gates slammed open. Zebediah Glay rode in with armed men. The wedding froze. Caldwell stepped forward, fists tight. "Leave now." Glay mocked him, mocked Lucy, threatened the land. Harriet trembled. Addison had warned her. They needed the law. After Glay left, Harriet pulled Caldwell aside and told him everything about the letters, the threats, the past danger. Caldwell's shoulders sagged, but he knew she was right. They needed help. The next morning, Harriet saddled a horse and rode hard toward Cheyenne. She had no idea the choice she made that day would change every life at Circle B Ranch. Harriet rode into Cheyenne with dust on her clothes and fear in her chest. She found Wyatt Earp in the sheriff's office, leaning back in his chair with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she told him everything about Zebediah Glay, the threats, the fire, and the danger facing Circle B Ranch, he folded his arms and nodded slowly. "I have heard his name before," Wyatt said. "If he is pushing this far, then the law needs to step in. Give me 2 days. I will bring men." Relief washed through Harriet so hard, her knees nearly weakened. She thanked him and stayed in town until he gathered a small posse. When they rode out toward the ranch, Harriet rode beside them, her hands tight on the reins. Every mile felt like a string pulling her back home, back toward danger, back toward everything she had tried to outrun. Circle B Ranch sat quiet under the evening sky when they arrived, but Harriet felt the tension humming in the air. Lucy ran to her the moment she dismounted, throwing her arms around her. "Thank God you are back," Lucy cried. "Caldwell has been on edge since yesterday." Before Harriet could answer, sharp gunshots split the night. Everyone ducked. Lucy screamed. Men shouted orders. Wyatt's voice boomed across the yard, telling everyone to take cover. Harriet grabbed Lucy and dragged her behind the porch steps as bullets ripped through the air. Ranch hands fired back from behind troughs and wagons. Harriet peeked out just long enough to see a lone rider racing toward the ranch house through the dark. Zebediah Glay. His silhouette was large and wild on the saddle. He fired toward Caldwell, who ran for cover near the bunkhouse. Lucy shook with fear. Harriet held her tighter. Then Lucy pulled away. "I have to help," she whispered. Harriet grabbed her wrist. "No, stay down." Lucy's eyes burned with fierce courage she had never shown before. She stepped onto the porch, revolver shaking in her hand. Harriet's heart stopped. Lucy fired. The bullet hit the ground near Glay's horse. The animal reared up in panic. Glay struggled to keep control. That moment was all Wyatt needed. He fired once. The shot rang through the night. Glay fell from his horse, wounded and furious. The rest of his men scattered under the pressure of the posse and the ranch hands. Within minutes it was over. Silence fell heavy across the yard. Smoke drifted like low fog. Harriet pressed her hands to her mouth. Her legs threatened to give out. Lucy ran to Caldwell. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, his face pale with fear and relief. Harriet watched them, her heart twisting. They had survived. They had each other. They were bound now by something deep. Glay was captured and would stand trial in Cheyenne. Wyatt promised justice would be served. As dawn lifted over the ranch, the danger finally eased. But Harriet felt something else settle in her chest, something quiet and certain. Her time here was ending. Inside the house, Lucy stayed close to Caldwell, her fingers resting lightly on his arm. His large frame leaned toward her, the way a tired man leans toward warmth. Harriet watched from the kitchen doorway, feeling the truth seep into her bones. This ranch was Lucy's home now. Caldwell's life belonged to her. Harriet was a guest in a world she had walked away from long ago. Caldwell stepped toward her later that morning. "Harriet, you saved us," he said softly. "You brought Wyatt Earp. You bravely stood up when danger came. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Harriet shook her head. "You owe me nothing. I only wanted Lucy safe." Caldwell placed a hand over his chest. "I want you to know something. You were brave too, even when you did not feel it." His kindness warmed her, but it also made her heart ache. She had once stood at the edge of this life. She had stepped away, and that had changed everything. Circle B Ranch soon returned to calmer days. Fence lines were repaired. Cattle grazed once more. Letters from Cheyenne said Glay's trial would begin soon. The worst was behind them. On a quiet afternoon, Harriet sat on the back porch beside Lucy. The breeze carried the smell of hay and the sound of horses trotting in the distance. "I keep thinking about how everything happened," Lucy said softly. "How I came here because you felt unsure." Harriet lowered her gaze. "I was scared. Scared of the unknown. Scared that I could not be what Caldwell needed." Lucy took her hand. "You were honest, and that honesty brought me here. It saved Caldwell. It saved our family. You gave us a future, Harriet. You do not even see how much you changed." Tears welled in Harriet's eyes. She looked over the bright field stretching far as the sky and felt something shift inside her. Acceptance. Peace. A quiet understanding that her path went in a different direction. "It is time for me to go home," Harriet said gently. "This place belongs to you now." Lucy's eyes filled with both pride and sadness. "I will miss you." Harriet hugged her tight. "I will miss you more." A few days later, Harriet packed her things. Caldwell carried her trunk to the stagecoach with surprising tenderness. When he turned to her, sadness rested heavy in his eyes. "You will always have a home here," he said. "Always." Harriet nodded. "Thank you for everything, Caldwell. You are a good man." A soft smile touched his lips. "And I hope one day you find someone who sees your heart as clearly as Lucy saw mine. Harriet's breath caught. She climbed into the stagecoach and watched as Lucy and Caldwell stood arm in arm on the porch, waving until the hills swallowed the ranch from sight. The journey back to Philadelphia was long but calm. Her family greeted her with tears and relief. Caldwell's support helped clear their debts. Their home was safe again. Months passed. Harriet began teaching children at a small schoolhouse. Their bright questions filled her days. She found joy in helping them learn. She found purpose she had never known before. Every week, Lucy sent letters filled with stories of ranch life, of small joys, of quiet nights and hard work. Harriet smiled at each one. Then, one cool afternoon, a small package arrived. Inside was a photograph of Lucy and Caldwell standing in front of the ranch house. Lucy held a baby in her arms, smiling with a joy that shone through the image. Harriet pressed the photo to her heart. Her journey had not ended with a wedding ring. But it had saved her family. It had saved her sister. It had taught her courage. It had led her to peace. And that was its own kind of love.